Hello, my name's Jordan and I'm on the video production team at MosquitoCurtains.com. In this session of planning your project, we're going to talk about a three-sided exposure with a tracking attachment. The first thing I want to tell you is that the concepts are exactly the same for a two-sided, three-sided, and even a wraparound application. Basically, if your project requires you to turn a corner, you're going to learn everything you need in this tutorial to complete just about any project out there. Before we get started, I want to talk about when it's good to call in your order. Many people are going to have these rectangular panels, and whenever you do, you can simply order yourself online. But if you have more complex examples like these slopes and notches, you're going to want to give us a call so that we can help you plan your project. This is a good example of that. You can see this gabled roof. We've got sloped panels up there at the top. This order would have to be called in. But with that being said, going through this tutorial will still benefit you because it'll give you an idea of how we go through the planning process. We've got a few goals for the project. Number one, we want to keep bugs out. Secondly, we want it to look nice. And finally, we want it to be easy to use. When choosing your perspective, you want to use the perspective that you're on your porch looking out towards your yard. This way we can agree on what is right and what is left. So you can see in this example, I've kind of flipped this around. This is actually my left side here. Over here, from that side of the house to this column is my right side. And the front side is along this railing here. So this is the perspective that I'm going to be using for the remainder of this tutorial. At this point, you've probably seen a bunch of videos. You're well aware of our surface and panel connections. We've got marine snaps that allow you to snap to a wall or a column, magnetic doorways that allow panels to seal to each other with a magnetic connection, and then stucco strips, which are basically a combination of the first two connection types. There are 3 steps to ordering your curtains. Step 1, panels. Step 2, your tracking, and step 3, the attachments you need to put it all together. So let's jump into step 1, panels. We're going to answer a couple of questions here. Number 1, how many panels do I need? And secondly, what are the final dimensions of each panel? Let's talk about the 2 different paths that you can take. First off, you can take an outside hang, which means you're going to go on the outside of your columns and the outside of your railing. Secondly, you can do the opposite, which is an inside hang, going inside the railing and inside the columns on your porch. There are 2 basic types of corner columns, regular and irregular. The main difference in a regular column and an irregular column is a regular column has some sort of a straight edge that you can snap to, creating a seal with your curtain, so you can actually directly snap to a regular column. An irregular column, you can't do that. Sometimes it's cylindrical, it's an ornate column, or maybe a fluted or a spindle column that doesn't give you a straight edge to be able to snap and seal your panel directly to the column. So let's talk about handling corners with regular columns. In this case, you want to consider an outside hang and ending your panels at corner columns because, like I said, with a regular column, you can snap your panel directly to that corner column, and that creates a really clean look whenever you finish putting up your curtains. Handling corners for irregular columns is a bit different. In this case, you're going to want to take an inside hang so that you can straddle the irregular corner column because, like I said, you can't snap to an irregular column. So we have 2 basic methods for handling corners. Number 1 is the right angle method, and secondly we have curved track. You can draw to a right angle, but you can't draw past the right angle. If you want to draw past a corner, you're going to have to use a piece of curved track. We recommend that you use the right angle method whenever possible because it does 2 things. Number 1, it provides the cleanest look, and secondly, it saves you a little bit of money because you don't have to purchase this curved track. So you can see in my particular example that I have irregular columns here on my corners. So eventually I'm going to end up taking an inside hang to straddle those irregular corner columns. But what I want to do in example 1 is I want to pretend that I have regular columns here on the corners so I can show you how I would handle this porch if I did indeed have regular columns. The first thing I would do is start with an outside hang. So this is my panel configuration, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to treat each side as if it is its own separate panel because I have the ability to snap directly to those regular corner columns. I can actually further split those panels by using magnetic connections. And the great thing about a magnetic connection is it allows you to open panels without having to unsnap anything. So for usability, these magnetic connections are really great. So you can see that I've placed a magnetic doorway here, a stucco strip here with a magnetic connection, and another stucco strip here with a magnetic connection. That's going to allow me to just simply jerk and pull this panel and be able to draw it to these corners without having to get up on a ladder and unsnap anything. So let's take a look at my panels in a side view. You can see, starting from left and going around to the right, that I'm going to wind up with 6 total panels. 2 panels by splitting this side, and right here, we like to consider these stucco strips as basically a mini panel. So even though that's just a 3-inch piece of fabric, I'm still going to call that a panel. Moving around to here, there, and ending up in my final panel right here. Now, what's great about lining this out left to right is I can really see my connections that I'm going to be using. This is going to help me a lot whenever I'm doing my attachments later. So if you equate this back to the porch, you can see that I'll be snapping to that white edge right there on the inside of the house, ending in a magnetic connection right here, starting a new panel and snapping to this corner, attaching my stucco strip right here to my next panel that will draw to this corner, and then finally I'll be taking a panel back to this corner and snapping my stucco strip right there to the house. So we've gone through an imaginary configuration. Now let's talk about my real configuration where I'm going to use an inside hang to go inside my railing and inside my irregular columns. Whenever I'm first looking at this, I like to imagine one big panel going around because these things can basically be infinite length if I want them to. So I'm going to start just by thinking about one giant panel. Again, I can further split that panel by using my magnetic connections. So the great thing about magnetic connections is it allows you to open those panels without having to unsnap anything. So you can see I've placed a magnetic doorway right here so that I can open and actually enter and exit right here at my magnetic doorway. And then I've got one panel right here that is going to lead up to that magnetic connection. And then I have one final panel that's going to go all the way around my porch back to this side of the house. Now, if you look at the usability of this thing, I'm going to have to do a couple of things to ensure that I can move my panel all the way around where I want to swag. So first off, I want to be able to gather my panels right here at this right angle method. So what that means is I'm going to have to be able to get this edge of the curtain back to that corner and this edge of that panel back to that corner. So what I'm going to need is the right angle method here is going to be fine because I don't want to draw past this corner. But over here, I'm actually going to have to use a piece of curve track because I'm going to need to pull this panel all the way around that corner and back over here so that I can actually swag in that corner. So this is a great example of how you can use a right angle method in a case where you don't want to draw past the corner, but a piece of curved track in a situation where you do need to draw past that corner to get your panel over to a place where you want to gather it and create a nice swag. So now let's look at this in a side view. You can see that I'm going to snap here to this edge, have a small 24-inch panel here, then start my one large panel that goes all the way around, ending in my stucco strip. Now again, we're going to treat all 3 of these as if they're a separate panel. Panel 1, panel 2, and my stucco strip we like to treat as a mini panel. So translating that to my porch, I'm going to start at this corner right here. I'm going to snap to that edge. I'm going to come out here to a magnetic doorway. And then from here, I'm going to have one large panel that goes all the way around inside my columns and inside my railing and ending right here at the house with my stucco strip. So let's talk about how to measure. First of all, you want to measure the width along the path the curtain and the track will take without any adjustments or overlap. So that's going to be my W1, W2, and W3. Then you want to measure the heights at all 4 corners from the underside of the track mounting surface to the floor. So whatever surface you're going to mount the track to, you're going to want to measure from that surface down to the floor, and that's going to become your heights at each corner. Then finally, you want to measure where you would like panel breaks for magnetic doorways relative to some reference corner. So in that case, that's going to be my D1 here. So let's take a look at my actual measurements. You can see I've got a 70-inch side here, 165-inch side there, and a 144-inch side over here on the right-hand side. Measuring heights at all 4 corners reveals that I have a 108-inch level height around my porch, which is really fortunate for me. One thing we like to tell people is that if your columns are within an inch or two of each other, you can simply take the largest height and use that as your unadjusted panel height. So in this case, if this corner column over here was 109 inches, I would go ahead and just make my unadjusted panel heights for the entire project 109 inches. Now, if you've got more than a couple of inches of disparity between two columns, I recommend calling in the mosquito curtains, and what we can do is for a nominal fee, we can actually create a slope on your panel to allow it to fit perfectly to your application. And then finally, you can see that I've got a 24-inch panel right here that leads me to my magnetic connection, and that's going to be important in the next step. So let's determine my unadjusted panel sizes. First off, you want to ignore the width of stucco strips. We're going to account for them later. Then you want to determine your unadjusted panel widths and make sure that the sum width of all of your sides equals the sum width of all of your panels. So taking a look at my actual dimensions here, I drop in my 24 inches that I want to use for this panel for my magnetic connection. Then that 355 inches here is going to be the required width that's going to make up the remainder of the width that I need to cover all three of my sides. So when you do the math, my 379 inches equals 379 inches, and I'm all set to go for the next step. Alright, so now we're going to do our final panel adjustments. In my case, my panels are going to be a constant 108 inches, and no height adjustments are actually required for tracking attachment. But there are some width adjustments required, so we've created a very simple 4-step process for you to go through on each of your panels. Starting with panel 1, you can see I've got a 24-inch panel there. Let's run through these 4 steps. Automatically add 2 inches per panel regardless of width, so I add 2 inches there. Secondly, add another inch per panel for each edge that will snap to a surface. Looking at panel 1, I am going to snap to this surface right here, so I'm going to add 1 inch right there. Third, subtract 1 inch for each edge connecting to a stucco strip. I don't have a stucco strip connecting to this panel, so I'm going to subtract 0. And finally, for tracking attachment, add another inch per 10 foot of panel width for a relaxed fit. This is just a little 2-foot panel, so I'm not going to have to worry about that. So I'm just going to add 0 because I don't need to add extra for that relaxed fit. Jumping into panel 2, I've got a 355-inch panel. Add 2 per panel regardless of width. Add another inch for each edge that will snap to a surface. Now you can see both sides of my panel 2 actually end in a magnetic connection, so I'm just going to add 0 there because I'm not snapping to a surface. Subtract 1 inch for each edge connecting to a stucco strip and ignore the width of the strip itself. So I am connecting to a stucco strip here, so I'm going to subtract 1. And then finally, add another inch per 10 foot of panel width. So this is about a 30-foot panel, so I'm going to add 3 inches right there. So my final widths come out to 2 foot 3 inches on my panel 1 and 29 foot 11 inches on panel 2. So this is going to be my final panel order. Once I get to the order page, I can simply order these panels and I'll be all set to go for my final panel order. Alright, we've made it through step 1 and we're on to step 2, tracking. In this section, we're going to answer the question, what tracking hardware do I need? So we've got straight track, we've got curve track, and we have splices and end caps. Alright, so let's run through some of the ground rules on tracking. Every piece of 8-foot track has a factory cut on each end. You only want to splice our factory cuts whenever you're putting 2 pieces of track together. So whenever you make a cut, any edge that's cut by you is actually going to end up receiving an end cap. So if you look at that logically, that means that only 1 track per entire side should be cut by you. So let's take a look at our particular application. The first thing I like to do is drop in my piece of curved track, because I know that's going to account for 15 inches on each side that curved track is connecting to. And from there, I like to go ahead and drop in my pieces of 8-foot straight track. So you can see I've got 5 pieces dropped in here. Now I can already see that I'm going to have some remnants, so let me take a look at my measurements and see what I can do with everything. So you can see for my 70-inch side here, I'm going to need 55 inches of that piece of 8-foot track, leaving me with a 41-inch remnant here. Coming up to this side with 15 inches here, a full track here, I'm going to need 54 inches of that piece of track to be able to make up my 165 inches there. And with a full track here, I'm going to need another 48 inches of this piece of track to be able to make my 144 inches on this side. So what I like to do is look at all of these remnants and see if they'll fit anywhere. So I've got this 41 inch piece here. That would need to be able to come and either hit this 48 inch piece or this 54 inch piece. Unfortunately, it's not quite long enough. This 42 inch piece would need to either make up this 48 inches or this 55 inches. Unfortunately, it's not quite long enough, and this 48 inches here would have to be able to make up that 54 inches or this 55 inches to be used. Unfortunately, it's not quite long enough either. So what I'm going to wind up with is 3 pieces that are basically just unusable. So what that means is I'm going to have 5 pieces of straight track, and that's going to ensure that I'm only splicing factory cuts whenever I'm putting this all together. So now let's look at splices and end caps. All track connections are going to need splices. So you can see where I connect here to that curved track and that curved track to that straight track. I'm going to need splices. Moving all the way around, I'm going to need 4 total splices for this project. End caps keep the carriers falling out, and right angle corners are going to require end caps as well. So if you look at where I've got ends, I've got an end here and an end here. That's logical. I'm going to need an end cap. And then I've got a right angle method here, so I'm going to require 2 end caps right there, giving me 4 total end caps I'm going to need for this project. So we are done with track. So whenever I get to the order page on the website where I'm ordering tracking, this is exactly what I'm going to order to complete my project. Alright, so we've made it through step 1 and step 2, and we're on to our final step, attachments. In this section, we're going to answer the question, what attachments do I need? Alright, so let's take a look at our panel connections. You can see that on this side, I'm going to be snapping panel 1 to that edge of the house, and on this side, I'm going to be snapping this stucco strip to the other side of the house, giving me 2 panel to surface connections. Secondly, I've got a magnetic doorway right here to connect these 2 panels, and I've got another magnetic connection right here to connect this panel with my stucco strip, giving me 2 magnetic connections. Alright, so let's talk about marine snaps. 5 snaps placed vertically is a good number to use whenever you're placing snaps. So on this wall right here and this wall right here, I'm going to be using about 5 marine snaps to attach my panels to those surfaces. You'll likely use extra snaps to seal the base of your curtain going around here so that you can get that nice clean seal on the bottom. So I want you to remember that the $130 industrial snap tool is fully refundable. So knowing that I'm going to be placing snaps over here on this wall, snaps over here on this wall, and even more snaps along the bottom, I'm definitely going to order that industrial snap tool because it's going to make my life 1,000 times easier whenever I'm putting this up. And then as soon as I'm done with my project, I can ship that back to Mosquito Curtains and get a full refund on my snap tool. Alright, so in this project I've got 2 panel to surface connections times 5 snaps is 10 total snaps to seal my sides. Then I'm going to add an additional 10 for sealing the base so I can get a nice clean seal down there, giving me 20 total snaps for my order. Now let's talk about magnets and fiberglass rods. 5 magnet pairs, which is 10 total magnets, is generally a good number to use for applications under 8 feet tall. You want to space your magnets 12 to 24 inches apart, and each magnetic connection is going to require 2 fiberglass rods. So taking a look at our situation, we've got 2 magnetic connections times 10 magnets is 20 total magnets, and those same 2 connections times 2 fiberglass rods is going to give me 4 rods that I'm going to need for my order. Our final attachment is elastic cords. Each corner of an inside hang application is going to require an elastic cord because it gives the curtain something to go around. Outside hangs don't actually require elastic cords because the structure itself provides something for the curtain to go around. But in my particular application, I'm using an inside hang to straddle these corner columns. So I've got 2 corners of an inside hang, and that's going to give me 2 elastic cords for my final order. Alright, so this is our final attachments order. One thing that I like to mention when talking about attachments is order plenty. In fact, whenever I complete a project, I like to order extra. Because if you order too many snaps or too many magnets, you can always return them with the industrial snap tool, and we will happily add whatever you send us back to your $130 refund. Alright, so we are done with this project and we are ready to go to the order page at mosquitocurtains.com and place our final order. So you can see here, this is our final order. We'll go and we'll order our panels, we'll order our tracking hardware, and finally, we'll order our attachments. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial on a 3-sided exposure. You can see that that's what we started with on the left-hand side was a raw, open porch, and on the right hand side you can see our beautiful mosquito curtains installed. So I'm super excited that you now have all the tools you need to plan your own project, and I personally can't wait to see the photos of your awesome installation. With that, thank you so much again and have a great day.